Hello, I'm Peter Littlewood, Director of the Young People's Trust for the Environment, and today I'm going to be talking about plastic and why sometimes it's not so fantastic. If you think about it, plastic is something that we've all come to rely on for our everyday lives. Within a few minutes of being born, babies make their first contact with plastic identity bracelets and plastic clips on their umbilical cords. Our homes, our schools and our shops are full of items made of plastic. At school, you probably sit on a plastic chair. You keep your books in a plastic tray. At home, you've probably got lots of these, as well as loads of other toys made of plastic. And there's a good chance you have a TV, a computer, or a phone made from plastic. The thing is that plastic's brilliantly useful. It can be strong and tough, or it can be really flexible and bendy. You can wear it, perhaps as a fleece or a football strip. You can wrap your food in it. It's airtight, watertight, and can be made into all kinds of shapes. But the trouble is that plastic is so useful and cheap to make, we've ended up making lots of items like these that are useful only once, and then they get thrown away. And too often that plastic ends up in the environment. Let's hear from some young people who've been checking out the plastic on one of their local beaches.
Hi, I'm Bo and we're here at the beach collecting plastic. We've been here for 10 minutes and so far this is what we've collected. Remember, this is in 10 minutes and it was on a tiny patch of beach.
Hi, I'm Lucy, and when 7,000 volunteers from the Marine Conservation Society cleaned 340 beaches in September 2017, they collected an average of 718 pieces of rubbish per 100 metres of beach.
Hi, I'm Sophie. Most of what we found today were tiny fragments of plastic. They had been broken down in the sea, so you couldn't really tell what they were. But birds and fish often mistake them for food.
Where we live, in southwest England, there has been an average of 1,036 pieces of rubbish every 100 metres on the beach.
Remember, that's what they found in one small area of beach in about 10 minutes. Now imagine that around the whole coast of the UK and you realise how much of a problem plastic has become. In fact, across the world, we now make over 300 million tonnes of plastic every year. Half of that weight is for single-use items, and it's estimated that up to 12 million tonnes of it ends up in our oceans each year. So how did it all start? Well, the history of plastic is actually a fairly short one. A Belgian chemist called Leo Baekeland moved to America and invented Bakelite, the first plastic, in 1905. It was brittle, but it was amazing. Before long, new forms of plastic were being invented, with polythene in 1933 and nylon in 1938. We made more and more stuff out of plastics of various kinds, and because it was cheap, it was used more and more for making single-use, throwaway items.
Did you know that in the USA, 1,500 bottles of water are consumed every second? That's 50 billion bottles a year. And bottled water costs 1,000 times more than tap water.
Yes, and to make those bottles, 17 million barrels of oil were needed, because believe it or not, plastics are made using oil. When plastics are thrown away, they often end up in landfills, huge holes in the ground that are filled up with people's rubbish. When the holes are full, they're covered over with soil, and the rubbish is left to rot. Except that the plastic doesn't rot. Nothing makes it disappear, so it will stay there for at least centuries to come. And as we've already seen, up to 12 million tonnes of plastic ends up in our oceans each year. There's a lot of floating plastic in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, which is now called the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. The ocean currents have gathered the rubbish in one huge mass, and when I say huge, it covers an area that's twice as big as France, and in some places it stretches up to 10 metres below the surface. The bizarre thing is, it was only discovered for the first time in 1997 by Captain Charles Moore. But it's helped us realise how serious the problems of plastic waste are for us all, especially when you remember that 99% of plastic waste sinks to the bottom in the oceans. It doesn't float at all.
Did you know there's an island in the South Pacific called Henderson Island? Researchers found 18 tons of plastic broken up into nearly 38 million pieces on the beaches. But no people live there, and the nearest humans are 70 miles away.
That's right. Plastic doesn't biodegrade, rot away naturally, but it does photodegrade. If it's exposed to sunlight for long enough, it becomes brittle and it can start to break up. So plastic floating in the ocean doesn't disappear, but it does get smaller and smaller over time. On many beaches in the Pacific, the sand now looks multicoloured if you examine it closely. It's because lots of tiny fragments of plastic are now mixed in with the sand.
There are estimated to be over 50 trillion tiny pieces of plastic floating in today's oceans. That's more than 500 times the amount of stars in our galaxy.
That's right. Each plastic bottle floating in our oceans right now will gradually break up over the course of about 450 years into lots of small pieces. And those small pieces are becoming more and more of an issue. Plastic floating in oceans attracts pollutants to it. Small fish eat tiny pieces of plastic coated in pollution. Bigger fish eat lots of smaller fish, and sometimes humans eat the bigger fish. We don't know yet what harm this may cause the fish, or indeed us, but it's likely that it can't be beneficial to health. And 1 in 3 fish caught for human consumption now contains plastic. All this plastic is a real hazard to wildlife too. About 1 million seabirds die each year as a result of mistakenly eating plastics, while about 100,000 turtles and marine mammals are killed by eating plastic each year. So this is a massive problem. And it leads to a massive question. How do we deal with it and prevent it from getting worse in the future? Well, it's going to be pretty much impossible to remove all the plastic that's already in our oceans and under the ground. Remember, even if we skim away the plastic floating on the surface of the oceans, 99% has already sunk to the bottom, and we can't clear it up. So it's really more about how we can change the way we think of and use plastic now and in the future. So firstly, think about unnecessary plastic packaging in supermarkets and throw away single-use plastic items. Try to avoid them whenever you can. Plastic straws suck. You can't recycle them, and they're only used once, just like plastic cups in cafes and plastic cutlery. So try not to use them and ask for reusable alternatives. Remember, you can refuse them as well as reducing your use of them. You can ask for paper straws, which will biodegrade, or get stainless steel straws for use at home. These can be washed and reused thousands of times. The 5p charge for plastic bags has worked really well, reducing their use by over 80% in the UK. Perhaps we need similar charges on disposable cups, and maybe a refundable deposit on plastic bottles that are returned by customers to the store after use. These ideas might stop people from being so keen to throw plastic away. If you do get a drink in a plastic bottle, why not reuse the bottle loads of times? And when it is too old to use anymore, make sure it's properly recycled rather than thrown away. If you have plastic carrier bags, think about ways to reuse them. These could include
Reuse as a swimming bag.
There's a shopping bag.
There's a boot bag.
Reuse as a bin liner.
You could also upcycle it into a kite, a rug, a basket, or even some recycled fashion. Many types of plastic can be recycled, so make sure that wherever possible, your plastic waste goes into a recycling bin. Look for the recycling instructions on the label. And when plastic is recycled, it can often be very different the second time round. For example, about 20 to 25 plastic milk bottles can be recycled into a fleece jacket for an adult. There are some biodegradable plastics already available, but most of these will only degrade properly in the high temperatures of an industrial digester at the moment. But exciting new biodegradable or part biodegradable plastics are being developed. We're not going to stop using plastic, it's just too useful in too many ways. But if we can stop using single-use plastics that we throw away and stick to using plastic items that will last for years and can be recycled properly at the end of their useful life, then we can all start making a difference.
Together, we can make a difference.
To find out more about plastics or hundreds of other environmental issues and plant and animal species, just visit ypte.org.uk.